Welcome to Songwriters Stories. I am so happy today to have here in the studio one of the best duos, collaborations ever to walk through the Myrtle Beach music scene. These people have written songs, they've recorded songs. I mean, they have been everywhere. And if you haven't been there, then you need to go. 'Cause I gotta tell you, I got Rick and Lesa here today. Rick Strickland, Lesa Hudson. And I went to see them just the other day. Y'all do a lot down at Dupin Winery. And I love it's a great setting. Y'all seem to be perfect, and you filled the house down there. Now, I came in and couldn't find any place to sit. And I love it that way. But what we're going to do today, we're just going to talk a little bit about you guys and how you got into music, then how you got into beach music, and just tell your story. That's all you got to do. You don't have to make anything up. It's all what really happened.
Theoretically, that should be pretty easy.
we were hoping so. That's what we're looking for, Rick. Yeah. Now, Lesa asked me to get Rick first. I'm used to the ladies first. We're going with Rick. So, Rick, start us out. Tell us how you got into music, what age you were, where you went, and how you came up to the ladder.
Okay. Well, I've always loved music. You know, my mom was the biggest music fan I ever knew. You know, she had, you know, like she would not commit to a style. I mean, to her, if you didn't listen to all types of music, you were just dumb. You know? And so she raised me right. You know, she got me hooked up. She was a big influence to start with. You know, just in what I was listening to. You know, she opened me up to all these different kinds of music.
But did she have a favorite genre out of all this?
You know, I never really knew her to have a favorite genre. That was one of the things that I remember so well about her. Is that she'd listen to black gospel, you know, white gospel, the gospel quartets, and then she turned right around and listened to George Beverly Shea, and Howard Keel, and she turned me on to opera like Sergio Franchi and Mario Lanza and people like that. I mean, she was like, looking back, it's just astounding.
That's awesome.
Yeah, how much, and she had this huge record collection, so I had that at my disposal too. And after I got to be older. And she never knew I was going there. She was gone, but I was. But she was a big influence, and she was also a really great singer. You know, she had a beautiful voice. Now, she was never professional, you know, but she would sing around the house, and that's how I learned how to sing with vibrato, you know, and learned, you know, got a good ear for pitch because she was always spot on, you know, on the money with all that. And so then she got me into music and got me interested in it. And then I always tell people, now this is a funny thing, and I love telling this story, is that my mom was so hip when it came to music. She turned me on to the Beatles. You know, I didn't know about it. And so back in '64 when they first started invading the shores, you know, they had "I Want to Hold Your Hand Out." And so she heard them just by chance on the radio, because she always had the radio on in the car. I wasn't with her. And just 1,000,000% got what made them cool, you know, and the guy mentioned that they wrote their own songs, so she was really impressed then, you know. So she comes home, and she was not one for hyperbole, my mom. She comes walking in, she goes, "Get in the car." And I go, I'm thinking, like, what did I do, you know? And she goes, I go, "Why?" She goes, "Just get in the car." You know, so we get in the car, and by this time I was kind of messing with the guitar a little bit, you know.
What age was this now?
I would have been, at that time, maybe 9 years old.
Okay.
And so she gets me in the car, and we just ride. I'm asking her constantly, "Why are we just riding around?" She had the radio on. She just, you know, like hushed. So then the Beatles came on. And so immediately, without her even saying anything, I was like, "Whoa, now that's different from everything else I've been hearing today." And then she goes, "Be quiet, listen to this," you know. And so then the guitar solo comes up, and she says, "Okay, now listen to this boy play the guitar." And then George plays the solo, which is brilliant, of course, you know. And she goes, "Now, if you want to play guitar, you need to play like him."
Good encouragement.
Yeah. And so then she found out they were going to be on the Ed Sullivan Show, and she kept me home. Said, "You got to stay. We're going to watch these guys." And we watched them, and my whole world changed that night. I mean, it literally was the life-changing moment. I just looked at them, and I said, you know, in my mind, I was going, I don't know how they're doing that, but I'm going to figure it out, and that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I mean, it literally was that, you know, strong a decision.
That's great.
So from then, I got a guitar, saved up my money and bought a real cheap acoustic guitar, and started learning on that. And then I had friends who had better instruments, and they started showing me what a good guitar felt like. And so it just kind of went on from there. And I was obsessed with guitar. You know, I would practice every morning before I went to school.
Did you teach yourself, or were you taking?
Oh yeah, I taught myself.
Okay.
And so I went and bought this guitar book called 1001 Guitar Chords, you know, and I would learn 10 chords every morning and, you know, 10 chords every night. And so that's how I learned how to play the guitar. And then when I found out the Beatles wrote their own songs, I was so naive. I thought, well, you must have to write songs to be in a band, right? You know, so I started writing songs, and it was surprisingly, it was really easy. I was going, gosh, this is do this, you know, this is easy as pie. And imagine my surprise when I found out that, you know, nobody, I was going around trying to play in bands, and nobody was up. Well, we can't play your songs. You know, we had to play stuff on the radio. And I'm like, why would we do that? That's just dumb. You know, I go, you know, we can't possibly play those Beatles songs as good as the Beatles play them. We should have our own songs, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So I was always, you know, from that moment on, I was in, and so eventually I found some like-minded kids, you know, and then put a little band together, and we'd play for the people in the neighborhood and just out on my front porch for anybody that walked by. And that got it all going. And then, of course, I progressed as time went on, you know, speeding it up a little bit. I progressed into, you know, being in bands, you know. And
But you wrote your first song at.
I wrote my first song. I wrote my first song when I was about 11.
Wow.
But then I always say I wrote my first good song at 13. and to show you what a peculiar kid I was, I'll give you some examples of the lyrics. It was called Sunrise. And the first verse, the words are, now bear in mind I'm 13 years old.
Okay.
The first verse is, you were young and innocent and so naive, and I was older and should have known better. I mean, how old?
13 he wrote this.
Yeah, how old was she? Like 10. So you know that's how. So I'm writing all those songs. I remember playing it for my mom, and she thought it was a good song, but she did laugh when I said those lines. But she was always really encouraging. So everything I wrote from then on, I would play it for her, but she was honest, and she would go, you know, well, you know, yeah, the first part of that was good, but that last part wasn't too good.
Well, it sounds to me like that was your first love song you wrote.
It was, yeah.
We're going to polish it up and do it one day.
Well, I actually did a recording of it last year.
That would be interesting.
Really?
Yeah, it's still held up, you know, because a friend of mine reminded me of it, and so I just pulled it out and played it. I said, well, you know, not too bad. But you know, so that went on like from there. But I always played original music, you know, because I didn't know any better, you know, and I didn't think you could be in a band unless you played original music, you know. So I just said, oh, this is what I'm going to do. And so then I progressed out to play it in bands, and then from there, for a long time, for like over 30 years, I was a studio musician. And the way I got into that was really just backhanded. I booked some time to record some of my own songs because I had worked in the studio previous to that, you know, because I'd been in a band called Mason, and we recorded at Electric Lady Studios up in New York, you know.
Okay.
Which was Jimi Hendrix's studio. So of course I was blown away to be there because that was my boy Jimmy, you know. And so I got the bug for recording, you know, in there because we had a really good engineer. He had just worked with Gladys Knight and Pips, and so I was draining his brain constantly. How'd you get that sound? You know. And so I went back, and so at that time, Columbia, where I lived, Columbia, South Carolina, there were three what for the time were state-of-the-art studios, you know. So there was a lot of work, you know. So I went in to just save up some money, went in to record a few of my own songs, and the engineer was really impressed with what I had done, especially the vocal harmonies. And so he started recommending me for other people when they would come in and would want to do some, you know, recording. And so eventually my reputation got around, you know, especially as a vocal arranger, but as a bass player and a guitar player too. And so I started working. And there was a long period of time where I didn't even go out on the road with bands. I just worked in the studio, you know, every morning. I'd go in there every morning about 9 o'clock, and sometimes work till 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, making triple scale. So there was I had no motivation to go on the road and play, you know, for $20. You know? But, you know, I did that for forever, and that was like, you know, I figured that was what I was going to do the rest of my life. But then, you know, I kind of accidentally. Like somebody once said about my songs, they said, a lot of people release songs, but a lot of Ricks just escape.
Yeah.
And there was a few of them that did that, and I started getting interested in the beach music world. I worked with a lot of the beach music bands in the studio, like helping them with their vocal harmony and stuff like that, and so I kind of, had that leg in there, and then
You use that genre then when you got into it.
I knew of it always, from the time it started.
Oh, okay.
But I only got involved in it when, I started working in the studio with those guys, like the first person that hired me to go in the studio was a guy named Willis Bloom. He had a band called Shag Time.
Okay.
And they were a real popular band at the time. They had a song that a friend of mine had worked on called Mr. Beach, and a friend of mine named Warren Moe's had written that song. And so he recommended that Willis get with me, because he said Rick can do some stuff I don't do,
Okay.
And so he called me up, and Willis was a character. I don't know if you ever got to meet him.
I did not.
Well, he sort of sounded like Wolfman Jack when he talked. He called me on the phone, "Hey, Mo, Willis, how you doing?" So he was the first guy that gave me a budget and a mission and put me in the studio and said, "Call me when the record's done."
Okay.
So I went in there and I started doing all of that, and I did all those sessions for all those years. And so then it, just eventually ended up with, a few people kept telling me, they'd hear some of my songs, the people I was working with from the beach bands, they'd say, well, you should put some of those songs out. I'd go, well, you guys are doing cover songs. I said, well, you could be the first guy to do original material, And so that was really what happened. I just put out at first, when I had out was a song called She Can't Fix Grits, which I did like a doo-wop song. The Shag Time had
Okay. That is a question I wanted to ask you. How do you get inspired to write a song, She Can't Make Grits?
This is actually, it involves Willis, because Willis wanted a song for Shag Time. And he called up, and his instruction to me was, he said, I want you to write me a song that every Southern man can relate to.
Okay.
And I said, okay, all right. So at the time I was working with Shag Time, and
Singing with
singing. I didn't play an instrument in that band, but so I got in the vehicle that night to go to the show, and I told the sax player, Dwayne Kitchings, who was a real character. I said to him, I told him about my conversation with Willis. Dwayne, just kidding, said, you should write it about grits. And I remember I went, yeah, that's not a bad idea. And so I started writing it.
That's where the inspiration comes.
Yeah. And I wrote it on the way to the gig. And in fact, I remember I didn't have any paper, but one of the guys in the band had a pen. And I found somebody had just changed their strings, the bass player, and he gave me a string packs, and I wrote the words on the back and stuck it in my coat pocket and took it home with me. And I called Willis the next day and sang it to him over the phone. When I picked up the phone, I said, what do you think? He says, perfect.
And that, just by the way, that was somewhere, we're still trying to research some stats on that, but that was, when he released it with Shag Time, it was somewhere in the late 80s, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
We know that Rick released it in 89.
Right.
And
Okay.
that was when it was a number one song.
Yeah, it was at least
And then-
2 years before.
Yeah, so somewhere along in there was when it was.
So the original was by Shag Time.
Shag Time, and it had horns. It was more of what you would think of as a typical beach song, with the horns.
Did Shag Time do more covers, or did they do originals?
Back in those days, in my time with Shag Time, and I played with the Band of Oz too, even and I played with the Band of Oz in the 90s, and I would say this was still true even then, that most of the bands did, like 80% of their list was, like the classics.
Yeah.
So
considered classics.
I don't remember either of those bands doing any original material, but that was just how it was then. Everybody did covers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, which brings me to another story, which I want you to tell the folks about. A certain song that I understand you went into the studio to record along with Jerry West, and nobody remembered being.
Yeah. Oh God.
yeah.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Dancing in the Streets. Now, was this the Martha and Vandell and the Vandells?
That song was on the album.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they Well, okay, like how do I get into this? Okay,
Go ahead.
well there was a guy.
Which song are we talking about?
I'm talking about Temptations About to Get Me.
Yeah.
Is that
Oh,
what
that the one that whatever the one that he and Jerry did.
Okay.
Yeah, that was
way back
Temptations,
from
Temptations
Memphis.
About to Get Me is the name of
Natural.
it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, this is a funny story, and it's absolutely true. Is we in Band of Oz, we recorded in a certain way. Like we were so busy that we would have to do like go duck into the studio on the way to a gig and do a song. And it was all cover stuff, except for the two songs I wrote for him,
Yeah.
And we go in there one night and they telling Jerry and I that they want us to do this duet on this song. Well, we'd never heard the song, so we went into the studio and they kind of taught it to us line by line. Okay, here's your line. Okay, Rick, I'll kind of sing that song. Okay, then Jerry did his. We back and forth. Here's the chorus. Okay, Jerry, you take the high part. I'll take the low one. Boom, and we do that. So we pieced it together, and then we jumped in the car and went to the next gig. We didn't think anything more about it. We never heard the whole song, just the individual lines we were cutting. So we get years later. Now there's a guy here in town called Julian Fowler. He calls me on the phone.
Julian B. Fowler?
Yeah. He calls me on the phone, and by this time we had the Rick Strickland band together, and everybody was gaga over Lesa, understandably. And so, he calls me and he says, he kind of talks like this, like, Rick. He says, you and Lesa should do that song that you and Jerry did. And I go, what are you talking about? He goes, that duet that you guys did on that album. And I went, that wasn't me, man. That wasn't me. I don't know what you're talking about. And he goes, yeah, it's called Temptations About to Get Me. I said, that wasn't me, brother. I don't know what you're talking about. You got the wrong guy. And he goes, I'm going to send it to you. So he sent it to me.
Yeah.
So I pull it up, and I'm listening to it. And I'm going, doggone, that is me and Jerry. And I had absolutely no memory of recording it. So I instantly called Jerry. Jerry, do you remember recording a song, me and you, called Temptations About to Get Me? And Jerry goes, no. He said, you sure it's us? I played it for him over the phone. He goes, dang, that's us. So neither of us remembered recording it. And the only way I found it later on, it kind of came back. Somebody started playing it on the radio, and it was kind of on the radio all the time. And people were constantly nagging me to work it up with Lesa. And I said, well, yeah, that's not what we do.
Well, since we're discussing this now, where can people go to find that song? Where can they?
I have no idea. I guess they would have to go find the Band of Oz album, Dancing in the Streets. It's on there.
Okay.
So they could get it off there.
We'll see if we can't find that.
I really think it's a beautiful song. I mean, showcases two powerhouse vocals. I mean,
Well, people will be looking for it now. They've heard.
Yeah.
So
They need to-
we've got to figure out how to make it available.
Well, it's a good song. I was shocked at how well we did on it because and Jerry finally was the one who remembered how we did it. And so and that was why neither of us remembered it because it was just so haphazard the way it came together.
Speaking of Band of Oz now, when did you join Band of Oz and how long were you with them?
I was with them between 96 and 98.
Okay.
And I did that one album with them. And, I had worked with them some previous to that in the studio, but and I worked with them afterwards in the studio also doing vocal arrangements and stuff like that. So it was it was really, I probably would still be there apart from the fact that my songs started getting popular on beach radio. The songs
recognition.
Yeah. And so it was just like, it was more logical for me to go out and do my own thing.
well, that was when Billy Joe Royal called.
Well, that was the other thing.
I want to hear this story.
That was the last tour I did with Billy Joe in the 90s. He called up and wanted me to go back out with him. I was his musical director for 3 international tours.
Oh.
And so he wanted me to go back out with him. And so I was kind of thinking, I need to move on anyway. So I was thinking, okay, well, I can go do this tour, and I'll have a nice big pad of money, to go back and, do what to live on while I was trying to get my own thing going. And I also went back to doing sessions, so I had a couple of things that were going to sustain me until I could figure out what I was going to do on my own. But yeah, that was it, and we started. It was funny because when the last tour out with Billy was when there was that song She Can't Fix Grits,
Oh, okay.
So people, John Boy and Billy, you probably remember those guys.
Oh, well.
They were the
very
ones
well.
that broke my version of that song. A friend of mine, it's a long story with that, so I won't get into that, but a buddy of mine who was very resourceful got it to them, and they loved it. And so
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
like their most requested song for like 2 years. So, you
With
know,
them being their home and there in Charlotte, obviously it was a morning show that I listened to.
yeah, oh sure. Well, the funny thing about it when they were getting real popular, or they were already real popular, I was in Nashville because I had moved out there to go on tour with Billy, you know, and I figured
Yeah.
I was anticipating I might just stay there, you know, after we got done with the tour and just always have a job with him. Anyway, so one day I get the phone rings, pick it up, hello, and this guy goes, "Hey, Rick, it's John Boy and Billy," and I'm like, "Yeah, hey, how you doing?" And I'm trying to figure out I know I must have met these guys. They sound real familiar, you know. So I'm trying to figure out where I met them because I'm feeling kind of embarrassed. And so John Boy figures out right away that I don't know have a clue who they are. And so he starts laughing. "You don't know who we are, do you?" I said, "Uh-uh." So he says, "Your song's killing, man." He said, "We played it on our show." He says, "You know, he explained, you know, what's going on." And so I was like, "Wow, this is cool," you know. So we talked. We had a nice little interview. And so as soon as I hung my phone up, everybody I knew from Columbia was calling me. And then I was like, I remember telling one guy, I said, "Man, if I'd have known how famous they were, I'd have been a whole lot nicer."
Oh, they had a great show and it syndicated to a very
Yeah.
large audience.
Yeah, I did a lot of interviews with them, and I did some live events with them because they were all about NASCAR, you know. So I would go and do those things with them, and sing the Grit song and all that kind of stuff. But
Well, I got to ask you this. Now, how, after all this, did you find this lady?
okay, well, I tell you what, it was by the grace of the good Lord above. I always say that the most fortuitous day of mine and my music's life was the day I made the acquaintance of the remarkable Mrs. Hudson here.
She is remarkable.
She is indeed in so many ways. But I'll try and you'll cut me off if I get too long. But we were both involved in an event in Florence, South Carolina. This goes back to Billy Joe Royal. One of the drummers I worked with in Billy Joe Royal's band was putting it on because he was living in Florence at the time.
Okay.
So he calls me and says, and at that time my song "Something Smooth" had been #1 for almost a whole year, you know. And he goes, "Yeah, man, you should come up here and do this show, man. These people would be really happy to see you, you know." And at the time I was doing sessions strictly, and I didn't have a band. He said, "Well, we'll learn your music and play behind you." So I sent him the music, and I went up there and I did the show, and sure enough, everybody was happy to see me, and it was great, you know. And I was having a great time. So I saw his brother out at the soundboard. I went out to hang out with him, and so that his band starts playing, and they're doing "Living in the City" by Stevie Wonder, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm listening, and right away, you know, the guy who played keyboards with me that day, a guy named Mark Benton, we're both going, "Whoa, man, those girls can sing." There was 3 girls, you know. It was her, Debbie, who was our bass player in the Rick Strickland band, and a girl named Heather Corbett. And they were singing, and when we were blown away instantly, we were going, "These girls are honking, man. This is incredible," you know. And so then they did the middle section of "Living in the City" by Stevie, and in that section, he has a whole like orchestra of synthesizers going, and the girls sang that in 3-part harmony.
Wow, that's impressive.
And we were like, "Whoa," you know. So we were blown away with them. And at the end of the show, I went up to the edge of the stage and started doing the "We're Not Very Worthy" back, you know. And Lesa, being Lesa, says, "Hey, get up here and take a picture with me. You know, would you mind taking a picture? Get your butt up here. Let's take a picture." You know. So I jumped up there and took the picture. You know, and then I thought, well, that was a cool experience. I went back home, and so then all of a sudden, the little record company I was with that had Something Smooth out, they were saying, "You know, we're getting all these requests for you to come do shows." You know, and I go, "I don't have a band," you know, and so they said, "Well, you got the keyboard player, man. You know, see what you can do." And so Art, the keyboard player who was there, he said, "You know, you should call up and see if those girls want to do it because you're going to need harmony." And man, they were good. And I said, and well, by this time I had researched her, and she had all this success in Christian country music. She was playing at the Roy Acuff Theater and all these top flight venues. She had a few top 10 Christian country songs. I said, "That girl ain't gonna want to work with us, man." She got her own thing going on. And he said, "Well, you might
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, he said, you might as well try it. So I called the mutual friend we had, and he called Lisa, and Lisa called me and said, yeah, we'd love to do it. And I was over the moon, you know. And so I didn't know that Lisa played anything. That was
Okay.
that was the weird thing. I just thought they all just sang. And Lisa goes, well, you know, me and Debbie, we both play instruments. And I go, what do you play? And she says, keyboards. And you know, she can't see me, but I'm just looking up the sky going, you know, and I go, well, what does Debbie play? She said, well, Debbie plays about 6 instruments. I went, oh, okay. So I really made it out that day. And so they come in, I guess it was maybe, I mean, it wasn't that long after that, y'all came down. And you know, and it's like, I ain't gonna kid you, the vocal harmonies on my songs are pretty hard, you know.
Yeah.
So I sent them all the songs and just told them what ones to learn. So they come in and they got stacks of, you know, lyric sheets, and, you know, organized to a T, just like Lisa is, you know. And so I'm going, what do you want to start with? Lisa's like, we don't care, because at first we were just kind of singing with the art backing us up. You know? And so it was like every song I called, first try they nail it, you know, over and over and over. So I was originally thinking, we'll work on the vocals today. We'll get the rest of the band in here tomorrow, and you know, that'll make it easier. Well, you know, 3 hours we were done. You know?
Yeah.
So I said, well, y'all might as well go back to the hotel. I'll see you tomorrow. You know, and so we got together the next day, and it just fell right in place. You know, the Rick Strickland Band was born, and we started immediately getting offers to play. You know, and so we, you know,
That was 2009.
yeah,
Well, I got to tell you, I can see already we're going to have to do 2 sets.
This first podcast will be Rick Strickland.
Right, what are we going to do right now? I want to get 5 minutes from you about how you got with him, where and I had it all fit together. Incorporate what he just God, that's a great story. How he found you and you tell it.
Well, I mean, what he said was it. I mean that is the story. I would probably repeat it, but you know, when we go back to that meeting when we had.
Why did you decide to stay with him then?
Well, when we had the first concert, I mean, I didn't know him before that. So the mutual friend set it up and was telling me about Rick. And so I did a little research on him too. And so just the person we're going to be playing with or whatever. And so I thought it was very impressive. And some of the music that I'd heard was really pretty. And I loved the harmony. So, you know, I was already a fan, you know,
Okay.
of Rick and his music before I met him. And of course, he was such a nice guy. You know, we all hit it off at that show that we did in Florence. And, you know, it was a nice meeting. And, you know, you leave and you think, okay, well, life goes on to the next thing. And yes, I had a band at the time. It was my band, Lesa Hudson Band. How creative is that?
Yeah.
And writing music and doing things. And then just, again, out of the blue, like you said, my friend, I reached out and said, hey, Rick, would like to talk to you. Are you interested? I'm like, absolutely. Can, you know, again, it really, I just was impressed by the music, the quality of songwriter that he was and singer. And, you know, he's just the real deal. You know, you can
Natural.
name any name you want to name, but Rick Strickland is the top, is the best, bar none. And he's musically, vocally, songwriting, everything. So I was really honored to work with him, and I was excited about it. And it really was an immediate friendship when we started talking. Just right away, we just hit it off like good friends do, you know, and talking on the phone and planning and dreaming. And I was kind of at a turning point in my career at that point as well. So I do agree it was a divine intervention thing where, you know, we were both got to here. And when we came together, you know, the rest is history, because that was when I got into beach music, you know, when I met him. And then we began working and producing and playing and performing. And, you know.
Well, it's been very successful. The people in the beach music world love the two of you. I mean, there's so many things that y'all do. You got great songs. I mean, both of you can have great songs out there. How can people not love what the two of you do and love music to begin with, but love beach music? There's no way. It's just, we're all very grateful for the time and effort that the two of you give to us people so we hear this wonderful music. Because it doesn't come easy. I know it takes work. It takes getting some great ideas on the bus and writing them on the back of a guitar string.
We still do that. We still write in the car. It's going to be harder now that we can't use our phone, because that's outlawed in South Carolina. You can't have your phone again, so Rick's going to have to learn how to hold it. We're forever, when we're on the road, you know, writing music. That's kind of our thing.
Well, we've about finished this one up. Believe it or not, we are hitting on the 30-minute mark. We like to cut it, so let's wrap this one up for today. Let's plan on doing another. God, we got so much more to talk about. To give them a little tease of what they're gonna get next time.
All
How
right,
about
that's good.
Again, thank y'all for coming out today. I love the stories. I love what you're saying. I love what you're doing. I love what you mean to all your fans. You all have a great group of fans. And to get to meet them when I come out to see y'all, they're such good people. And it may be because you got such good music. I'm gonna say those two work hand in hand. But thank you again, and thanks everyone for watching here on Surfside Stories. We will have an episode 2 with these two. I can guarantee you. And we thank you so much.